A huge storm is coming to the United States today and tomorrow, and this is going to bring a significant risk for severe weather, including numerous to widespread damaging winds, large hail, and several tornadoes, and even a few strong tornadoes will be possible. In addition to that, we are tracking a large area of snow that'll be falling in the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and Northeast over the next 48 hours, and some areas could pick up over a foot of snow. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next several days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country right now. And we have a large and potent trough that is currently forming back over in the Central Plains, a lot of moisture as well currently kicking into gear across the lower Mississippi River Valley and back into the Ohio Valley. And unfortunately, over the next several hours, we are not just dealing with a threat for severe weather later today, but a significant flooding threat is about to take shape across areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas, as a lot of rain will be falling over the next 12 hours, and this could lead to some major flooding, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. If you're back over in the southeast, things are quiet for today, and the west coast is finally cleared out from that big atmospheric river event that just happened over the last 48 hours. Unfortunately, though, we are talking about a big-time storm that's forming right now in the Great Plains, and this is going to bring a ton of disruptions. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for today, and the Storm Prediction Center has expanded the enhanced risk for severe weather across many areas in the deep south. This includes Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and western Alabama, and even a sliver of the Florida Panhandle. We also have a rare marginal threat that goes all the way back up even into Kentucky, throughout parts of Georgia, and also back through Texas. Now, the main concern for today will be damaging winds. The current risk that we think is going to be the greatest across the board will be damaging winds. We do expect this to be numerous to widespread, as we are dealing with a line of thunderstorms, and this is going to cause both damaging winds and as well as tornadoes. I wouldn't be surprised if the Storm Prediction Center, if confidence grows, if we get a small moderate risk for severe weather for that damaging wind threat. If we don't, though, we are still talking about a significant risk for damaging winds, so hatch down your trampolines and make sure you're protecting loose lawn items. The hail threat for today is relatively low. The greatest chance of that will be back over where the storms initiate, which is back over in Arkansas, western Mississippi, and northern Louisiana. Now, our tornado risk for today has expanded even further. Our 10% hatch tornado risk is now all the way back down towards the Gulf Coast. It includes southern parts of Alabama and Mississippi now. It did not initially include those areas. It also goes back through Memphis, Tennessee, into southwestern Tennessee, and also back into eastern Louisiana and southeast Arkansas. I wouldn't be surprised if they expand this a little bit further to the north and east as we go later into the next outlook, so make sure that you're keeping a close eye on that. But nonetheless, you should be prepared for tornadoes anywhere in the green, brown, or yellow, as there will likely be several tornadoes today that either come from that line of storms or from discrete cells that form out in front of the line. We are expecting to go live here today on this channel, so make sure you are subscribed down below and click the bell icon down below so you're notified when we do go live. Today's tornado risk is continuing to increase in the deep south and back through the Tennessee Valley. Overall, today's environment is very favorable for tornadoes in a couple of different fashions. First off, we have a lot of wind shear out there and a lot of instability. That is already going to increase our risk for severe weather, but we're also dealing with two different modes of severe weather. We are going to have a line of storms that forms as we go into the early to mid-afternoon hours across western Tennessee, southeastern Arkansas, and back through Texas, which is going to pose its risk for damaging winds and also some embedded tornadoes in that line of thunderstorms. Here's something that's a little bit more conditional, is if we can see any sort of discrete supercells form out in front of that line of storms, we have an extremely favorable environment for strong tornadoes if a storm is able to mature. It's a big conditional risk today. It's not necessarily we are definitely going to see it, but it is something we are going to have to monitor very closely throughout the afternoon hours and as well as into the early evening hours today. In addition to that, as this line continues to track east by around 10 o'clock or so, it will continue to produce a threat for damaging winds and even some tornadoes. If we see any storms come out of the Gulf and actually go here into southern Mississippi or southern Alabama, we could also see a strong tornado risk evolve down here as we go into the late evening and into the early overnight hours. And this tornado risk isn't done there. We're going to continue to deal with the threat for damaging winds and an isolated tornado threat all the way through southern Georgia, also back through the Florida Panhandle into Sunday morning, before eventually this is moving through parts of Florida as we go into Sunday afternoon. There could still be a very isolated tornado risk even into central Florida as we go into Sunday afternoon, and I wouldn't rule out something back over in North Carolina as well. So this is a day that you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts, have a tornado action plan in place, and additionally, if you are anywhere down near the Gulf Coast with that nocturnal tornado threat, you want to make sure that you definitely definitely have multiple ways to receive alerts. Now let's go through the timing, beginning with what's happening out there this morning. We got a lot of rain falling out there. Again, I did mention at the top of this forecast that a significant flooding threat is going to evolve, and I'm not joking. We have a ton of rain that is going to be training here across areas like Arkansas, back through Kentucky and Tennessee, all the way throughout this morning and as well as into the early afternoon. Just notice how all that rain is falling across Kentucky and Arkansas. This is going to be a long day when it comes to both severe weather and a significant flooding threat. As we get closer to 1 to 2 o'clock, notice how storms are starting to fire up here back out in Arkansas and also even into northern Louisiana. Eventually, as we get closer to 4 to 5 o'clock, though, that is when this line of storms really starts to organize all the way back up into Kentucky, where damaging winds will start to really become a factor here across several states, in addition to some embedded tornadoes. Here's where the conditional risk is. We are currently monitoring the threat for discrete supercells that fire up out in front of this line of thunderstorms as we go into the mid to late afternoon hours. It's contingent on there being enough forcing. If we do get enough forcing, I do think the potential for a couple of isolated strong tornadoes will exist, maybe even as far north as central Tennessee. I know right now there's not a hatched risk for central Tennessee, at least at the time I'm recording this forecast. I think that's going to be something that gets added if the confidence grows of maybe an isolated discrete cell that goes up there into central Tennessee. Eventually, by around 9 to 10 o'clock tonight, this line of storms is moving through Nashville, central and southern Kentucky, back through eastern Mississippi, and eventually moving into northwest Alabama, before eventually it continues to track across eastern Tennessee and eastern Kentucky, even into the overnight hours, back over near Pikeville, Kentucky, also through Knoxville, Tennessee, and also into central Alabama. And then by sunrise Sunday morning, this line will continue to track east. I think it'll be weakening by the time it gets to Virginia and North Carolina, but there could still be some isolated damaging winds and even a tornado risk back over into far western South Carolina and also Georgia. And then eventually it approaches the coastline. I think the tornado risk back up in North Carolina and South Carolina for Sunday and even up into Virginia is very low because this line of storms will just be fizzling out for the most part. And then back over in the southeast, storms will start to fire up as we get closer to around 4 to 6 o'clock back over in Texas and Louisiana. This will start out as a pretty modest line of thunderstorms, just some isolated scattered damaging winds, but it's going to intensify as storms start to merge into this line as we get closer to around 9 to 10 o'clock tonight. I think the potential there for significant damaging winds will definitely ramp up back over in southern Mississippi and eastern Louisiana. The concern is if we do see any storms come out of the Gulf, we could see a strong tornado risk evolve down here near the Gulf Coast. Nonetheless, if that doesn't happen, we're still talking about a line of storms with the potential there for even an isolated strong tornado embedded in the line of storms. And then eventually right around 3 to 4 in the morning, this line continues to track across central Georgia, the Florida Panhandle, and eventually as we go into Sunday morning, this line is approaching the east coast of Georgia and also through northern Florida. And I do want to point out, as we even go into Sunday afternoon, the Daytona 500 is happening this weekend, and there will be some showers and thunderstorms Sunday afternoon. So this is something that will disrupt that race as this continues to track south, and then eventually as we get closer to the evening hours, this is fully dying out. So I would say in general, the main concern across most of Florida will be damaging winds, but there could be a brief tornado somewhere back over in central or northern Florida. Tornado threat's a bit more elevated if you are in the Florida Panhandle. And guess what? There's more stuff to talk about with this storm system. We also have a risk for snowfall back over in the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and back into the Northeast throughout the daytime hours today. The heaviest snowfall will be in Michigan and also back into the Northeast. Eventually, as we go into overnight tonight, there will be freezing rain and sleet falling in a very thin corridor from eastern Missouri all the way back over towards Long Island. And then eventually, as we go into Sunday morning, the heaviest snowfall is going to be located back over in eastern Michigan, Ohio, even into Kentucky. We could see some snowfall there, where there's also going to be an isolated risk for severe weather later today. So a double whammy basically when it comes to snow and as well as severe weather. In addition to that, heavy snowfall across northern New England, which will stack up very quickly. And then eventually, as we go into Sunday afternoon, the only thing that's left over from this disturbance will be lake effect snow back over in the Ohio Valley. And then in addition to that, heavy snowfall back over in parts of New England. It'll eventually wind down as we go into early Monday. So between now all the way through Sunday night, we are anticipating an additional 2 to 4 inches of snow for many areas in the Midwest. Back over into Michigan, that is where we're actually talking about a much more significant amount of snowfall. The National Weather Service is forecasting as much as 12 inches of snow back over in areas just to the north there of Detroit, back over into the thumb of Michigan. Northern Ohio expected to see around 2 to 4 inches of snow, and same thing for Indiana. And then if you're back over in the Northeast, unless you are in northern New England, you're not going to really see much snow. For the most part, we're talking about a large area, around a coating to 5 inches in southern New England, back through Pennsylvania, and even in the Appalachian Mountains. But if you're back up in northern New England, we could have a very large area here, around 8 to 12 inches of snow, as much as 18 inches of snow possible back over near Lake Ontario and also back up into northern Maine. There will be ice accumulation as well. We are anticipating a large area to see around a glazing up to a 1/10 of an inch of ice. There could be a few select locations back over in northern Pennsylvania that get as high as a 1/4 of an inch of ice. So be prepared for this. If you're traveling, definitely take it slow on the roadways. And unfortunately, there will be a significant flooding risk that comes out of this large storm. We are talking about a high risk for excessive rainfall, according to the Weather Prediction Center back over in central western Kentucky, also back over into northwestern Tennessee. There's also a moderate risk that goes into southern Ohio and back into Arkansas. Turn around, don't drown if you are traveling on the roadways today, and if you are in low-lying areas, you will likely have to seek higher ground later today, especially if you are in that high risk where excessive rainfall is very likely, which would again lead to significant flooding. So here's how much rain we can expect between now all the way through early Monday morning. We are anticipating a significant area of rainfall across Kentucky and Tennessee. A widespread 3 to 5 inches of rain is likely. There will be some isolated locations that pick up as much as 8 inches of rainfall today. So again, be careful out there, especially if you are in western Kentucky or northwestern Tennessee. Elsewhere, we're still talking about a lot of rain, definitely a lot more rain than some of these areas can handle, especially if you are in a low-lying area. So again, make sure you are being safe out there today with the combination of severe weather in addition to the risk for flooding. It is going to be a very dangerous day out there, which is hence why we'll be live later today covering this severe weather event. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon down below so you're notified when we do go live. Now, beyond this weekend, we are anticipating a huge Arctic blast this week. This will be some of the coldest weather that we've seen in years across the United States, with many areas as much as 40 to 50 degrees below average back over in the Great Plains Tuesday through Thursday, and this will eventually move to the east as we go into Friday into Saturday. If you want more details on exactly what's going to be happening here, make sure to watch my video from yesterday. We go a lot more detail there. If you don't want to watch yesterday's video, we are going to talk all about this in tomorrow's forecast, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. In addition to that, we also have another winter storm coming as we go into the middle of next week. There will be some snow back over in Missouri and Arkansas, maybe even some severe weather near the Gulf Coast, but the big event out of this will likely be as we go into late Wednesday and Thursday, where heavy snowfall goes into areas like the mid-Atlantic, and then eventually we could see a nor'easter back over in New England as we go into early Friday morning, and this could bring some very heavy snowfall, blizzard conditions, and much more. Definitely something we are going to be talking all about in tomorrow's video if this trend does continue, so make sure you are subscribed down below and click the bell icon down below so you're notified with the latest updates.